Now, we knew that this was going to happen.
Huh? What?
It's been happening since 2020 and even prior to that, because with CCT cameras and all the monetization, and I mean monetization, that we're being monitored, that is, and how they make money from it in some regards of contracts, you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
I'm confused.
I'm talking about AI facial recognition works by converting a face into a mathematical map. And they've been using this very discriminatory. We're talking about a face print and comparing it against a database, right? Because law enforcement databases, out of all things, driver's license databases, security camera footage databases, social media scrape databases, the algorithm outputs a match score. If the score is high enough, police use it as a lead or, into many cases, as a bias for arrest. Here's the big problem dealing with all of this, because these algorithms were predominantly trained on data sets that are overwhelmingly white and male. So when MIT researcher Joy Buolamwini herself, which is a Black woman, audited 3 of the major commercial facial recognition systems that are used by law enforcement back in 2018, she found error rates for dark-skinned women as high as 34.7%, so roughly 35%, and for light-skinned men, less than 1%. So we're talking about 35% error rate on Black women's faces, and that the technology in some regards has improved since 2018, but the fundamental training data bias has never been fully corrected. And law enforcement, out of all things, is using it anyway.
I mean, my God.
AI facial recognition misidentified Black people at rates 10 to 100 times higher than white people, depending on the algorithm. And the NIST, we're talking about the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is the federal government's own data, 10 to 100 times higher. That is not a glitch. That is a pattern.
Man, there you go with that bullshit.
I want you guys to think back to the year 2020. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this case, but it had to do with Robert Williams of Detroit. Already mentioned, wrongful arrest, 30 hours detained. Michael Oliver, Detroit, 2023, Black man charged with felony assault. Facial recognition was the primary evidence. Case dismissed with true perpetrator was identified, but he had to go through incarceration. He had to go through processing. He had to go through fingerprint. Time was lost, family, job, all these other things because of misidentified by AI. Oliver spent weeks under a felony charge. Now, Porcha Woodruff of Detroit in 2023, 8 months pregnant, arrested at home for robbery and carjacking. Facial recognition match, case dropped. She filed a civil lawsuit, as she should have. Randall Reed, Del Cobb County, Georgia, 2022, arrested in Louisiana while visiting family for a theft in Louisiana he had never committed. He had never even been to Louisiana.
Whoop. Here I come.
Because you are under arrest.
This is Robert Williams. 3 years ago, he was arrested on his driveway for a crime he hadn't committed.
They made a mistake, baby. It's okay.
The reason? Artificial intelligence mistook him for this man, who was suspected to have stolen thousands of dollars worth of watches.
Got processed.
Robert was released after 30 hours in custody, but the experience has had a lasting impact.
Imagine knowing you didn't do anything wrong, and they show up to your home and arrest you in your driveway before you can really even get out the car and hug and kiss your wife or see your kid.
In a statement, the Detroit Police Department said it has strict rules for using facial recognition technology, and it sees any match only as a clue and not as proof that someone committed a crime. But at the time of Robert's arrest 3 years ago, studies showed that the technology was between 10 and 100 times more likely to misidentify Black people than white people. This is because the technology is trained on predominantly white datasets. And that's not just an issue with facial recognition. This is an AI image generator. All I have to do is put in some words and it will generate an image for me based on the vast amount of data that it's been trained on. So if I prompt it to generate images of workers in a high-paid profession like a lawyer, all of the images I'm getting in this instance are of white people. Now, if I prompt it to generate images of workers in a low-paid profession like a fast food worker, all of the images I'm getting in this instance are of Black people. But there could be a bias here, because actually, The majority of fast food workers, at least in America, are white. We spoke to the company who made the model, and they told us, we worked hard to give the model a much more diverse and wide-ranging dataset. This included using sophisticated filters that create a more globally representative result of common items. This startup in Sheffield is working on a different solution. If we don't have the data, why not make it up?
We create what we call digital humans, and those digital humans we can basically vary many aspects of any skin tone, any ethnicity. And by mixing all of those together, we build up a massive database of really varied digital humans.
But using computer-generated or synthetic data to train AI models has its own set of problems.
I haven't traveled across the whole world. I haven't met anyone from every single culture and ethnicity and country. So there's no way I can develop something that would represent everyone in the world, and that could lead to further offences.
As AI seeps into more and more of our daily lives, it's essential that it represents the world we live in. And although creating synthetic data can help, it's unlikely that it will eliminate the issue of racial bias in AI.
Randall Reed, DeKalb County, Georgia, 2022. He was arrested in Louisiana while visiting family for a theft in Louisiana he had never committed. He had never even been to Louisiana. Facial recognition, wrongful arrest. Harvey Eugene Murphy Jr., Houston, Texas, 2021. Wrongful arrest, facial recognition. Alonzo Sawyer, Washington, D.C., my hometown, 2023. Wrongful arrest, facial recognition. Nijeer Parks, Woodbridge, New Jersey, 2019. Wrongful arrest, spent 10 days in jail, spent $5,000 defending himself based upon false facial recognition.
It's huge.
7 documented cases, all Black men and women, all innocent, all arrested on the basis of flawed algorithm. And these are the only cases that have been publicly identified and litigated. Researchers believe that the actual number of AI-driven misidentification is far higher than that. Most people don't even have the resources to fight back and prove the technology was used against them. Now, here's some other data points that I want you guys to look at. They even have it. Facial recognition systems are flawed and biased. Police departments are using them anyway because they definitely don't care about who that it may harm and who that it may affect.
What an idiot.
I want you guys to listen in on this because these numbers, no less, are staggering when we look at them.
Oh my God.
Now it states here that 189 facial recognition algorithms from 99 developers found that Black and Asian people were up to 100 times more likely to be misidentified by the technology than white men. AI technology has improved over the years, but there is a significant bias and there is no evidence that has been accurately improved. I have some more information for you because when we look at this, there's disparities even in AI technology as they're trying to recognize who the offenders are and the perpetrators are. It states here that Black people are more likely to be arrested for minor crimes than white people. Their faces are more likely to be mugshot databases used in facial recognition searches and thus more likely to be scanned and selected by facial recognition algorithms. And additionally, it found that police surveillance cameras are disproportionately installed in Black and brown neighborhoods, further increasing the chances they'll be wrongfully matched. Of the 8 confirmed stories of wrongful arrest detailed in the Post investigation, 7 of the people are Black out of the 8. So we see where they get it wrong and we see where they get it right. But see, here's the part that should have every single one of you calling the city council member today. The federal government has no comprehensive ban on law enforcement use of facial recognition. A few cities like San Francisco, Boston, Portland have local bans, but most of the country has no regulation, ladies and gentlemen, no mandatory accuracy standards before deployment, no requirement that officers verify a facial recognition result before making an arrest. Now, the requirements that defendants even be told that the facial recognition was used in their case. You could be sitting in a jail cell right now in 2026, having been arrested by a racist algorithm. How can an algorithm be racist? Have you ever wrote a prompt?
Tell me how.
Have you ever been on Perplexity, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, these large language models, and how you can dial in certain prompts to identify and execute certain things. And you might never find out that's how this gets to the front of your door and how text and algorithms and code can be misused to be racist. If you don't understand the technology, then maybe you don't understand what I'm saying, but I do. And the technology vendors, Clearview AI, DataWorks Plus, Amazon recognition through Amazon, placed a moratorium on police use in 2020 that has since expired. Now, a lot of these companies have faced minimum federal oversight, meaning that there's rarely and barely any federal barriers or guidelines or oversight committees that's governing it. They are selling biometric identification technology to law enforcement at scale. And when the algorithm gets a Black person arrested for a crime they did not commit, the company faces no liability. They're not suing the company. They're suing the city, thus using our tax dollars for something has been wrongfully coded, something has been wrongfully prompted and dialed into a tribute of Black people being incarcerated even when they're innocent. Now, the prosecutors who filed charges based on AI hit faces minimal liability. And the Black people, we get a felony charge on our record, even if it's eventually dropped. That can hunt any person's employment, their housing status, their child custody cases, their professional license forever. See, I'm not dealing in despair. So let's kind of give you some solutions, some answers. So here's what I think we need. First, we need to demand that our city and county ban on strictly regulated police use of facial recognitions. We need to find out if the police department uses it or not. File a public records request, right? Your local ACLU chapter will help you if you fund them, right? But again, I digress on that, but the truth is the truth.
Fact.
If you or someone you know was arrested and something fell off about how police identified you, ask your attorney to specifically investigate whether facial recognition was used. In many jurisdictions, this information must be disclosed if requested. And then third, support the Facial Recognition and Biometric Technology Moratorium Act. Federal legislation has been introduced multiple times and has never passed the surveillance industry lobby because it's powerful. Contact your senators and representatives. This is a bipartisan civil liberties issue. Now, follow Joe Buolamwini work at the Algorithm Justice League at algorithmjustice.org. Follow the ACLU Surveillance Tech Project. Follow the Electronic Frontier Foundation. These are the people fighting this in real time. And lastly, talk about this. Share this video because the silence around AI racial profiling is the same silence that surrounded stop and frisk before the lawsuits even started working. They replaced the racist cop with a racist computer and called it innovation. And they thought that nobody would bring it up, that nobody will understand, that nobody would know what the hell's going on. But what they did, they built a Jim Crow algorithm and called it public safety.
It comes from China.
See, here on this platform, we call it what it is, whether you like it or not. But nevertheless, you should definitely subscribe because either you're a hate watch, a love watch, or maybe you just get informed. But nevertheless, I'll see you next time.